Mr. Sandy Eyes was a well-rounded sort of man. He lived in the house by the lake. He often dreamed of achieving absolute silence so that he could be left to his imagination in peace. But alas, the world around him was filled with a symphony of sounds he wished he could see. Sometimes, Mr. Sandy Eyes would stand by the lake and imagine a world under the water, a world just like the one he lived in. It was on one of these afternoons that Mr. Sandy Eyes came to the realization that it must be the place all those people went to when they died. The sound of the waves, their cries. Mr. Sandy Eyes had to imagine everything, for he had no eyes, and so he used his dreams to sculpt the world around him, like an artist molding clay. Mr. Sandy Eyes had one friend called Owl. Owl lived in the place where all the lost things went, just beyond the tall trees and the wild grass. Mr. Sandy Eyes would often come and visit her, and she would give him the lost treasures that she found. It was one of these gifts that came to be his most prized possession, an old photo album she found buried under the wreckage. He liked the way she described the pictures to him. Everyone seemed so happy and loving. Owl created this feeling inside Mr. Sandy Eyes that was unlike anything he had ever felt before. Whenever he was around her, his stomach felt hollow, but his heart was so full he often feared it would burst.
What color?
Red, a brilliant shade of red. Look at the light. It's red, like the back of your eyelids in the sun. The stems are green. The leaves are like tiny umbrellas for bugs.
I see.
The feeling Mr. Sandy Eyes got around Owl became stronger every time he saw her. A rush of blood went to his heart and a pounding in his head. It wasn't until they danced together one afternoon that he realized he was in love with her. From that day on, Mr. Sandy Eyes and Owl spent all their time together. And though he was happy, he couldn't help but wonder what the roses looked like, or the smiling faces in the photos. He was curious, so curious. More than anything else, Mr. Sandy Eyes longed to see the face of the woman he loved. He tried his very best to put the longing out of his head, but every day it seemed to grow. One day, Mr. Sandy Eyes went out to meet Owl, but something had changed. Something was not right. The grass no longer reached his fingertip, and he could no longer tell which way he was going by the trees. And as the sun began to sink low into the fiery sky, Mr. Sandy Eyes realized that he was lost. No matter how long or hard Mr. Sandy Eyes fought, he couldn't seem to make his way out. And so he stayed there for 4 days and 4 nights. The nights were the worst. In the night, the forest came alive with sounds he did not know and strange things he had never encountered before. In his solitude, that longing, that longing in which he had tried so hard to put out of his mind began to creep up on him once again. Mr. Sandy Eyes became determined.
I'll find a way to see again.
On the 5th day, something miraculous happened. Weak with hunger and thirst, Mr. Sandy Eyes, who had by this time lost hope of ever finding his way out, heard a figure emerge from the woods. Owl, who had been searching for him endlessly, rushed to his side, taking him into her arms. Shortly after, Mr. Sandy Eyes and Owl made it back. They married. His heart still ached the way it always had, but now there was something else there too. The longing. It never left him. It plagued his dreams with sadness and made him bitter. Owl knew something was wrong. So, on a cold and blustery winter evening, Mr. Sandy Eyes took her to the lake to tell her of his troubles.
I want to see again.
The world isn't as beautiful as you think.
I just want to see your face.
I'll give you my eyes, if you'll give me your heart.
And so Mr. Sandy Eyes accepted her offer, hungry with desire. And as his new eyes fluttered open, he thought of all the wonderful things he would see. And it was true. He could see the lake. He could see the flowers. And then his eyes focused on the one thing he wanted to see the most, her face. But there was nothing. There was no one. And so, for the first time in Mr. Sandy Eyes' life, he found that place where there was absolute silence.